Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 115.
So, Ben, there is a famous internet picture of you in a kayak, just kayaking down a street in Utah when it had flooded or something?
In Idaho, yeah. There was a flood.
You were randomly
in Idaho. And I made the newspaper.
Randomly in Idaho when it flooded and decided perfect time to bust out the kayak and just go tooling around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a big kayaking guy, or was that just a target of opportunity?
When we go to visit my sister-in-law in Twin Falls, they usually get their hands on some kayaks and we go out on the Snake River. And we were going to that week, but then the flood happened and we didn't have to go quite so far.
Oh, yeah, you told that great story about how everyone almost died getting stuck under a bridge because you tied everyone together.
Completely different occasion, but yes.
But yes, okay.
I do have a history of disasters on rivers.
So scale of 1 to 10, you're about a 3 or a 4 on the kayaking.
Yeah, good assessment.
Okay. Kayaking was one of those, long-time listeners will know that I flirt with, and I have illicit relationships with hobbies and side things that I just interested in and want to do, and so then I'll research and look into it and just
Was kayaking one of those? I didn't know about this.
This was a very long time ago, and I did not spend a ton of time on the kayaking thing, and I'll tell you why. Because after only a few hours of researching kayaking, I was specifically looking at the whitewater stuff, because that looks really cool and exciting. I bet I could do that and have a wonderful time. This is back when I was 20 and felt indestructible. Now, as a 40-year-old, if I sleep wrong, I'm out of commission for several days. So that's not a thing anymore.
When you were 20, weren't you going to the Air Force Academy? When did you have time and resources to do this?
To what, research a hobby? I didn't do that.
I
was just looking into it. I didn't do any kayaking. And here's why. I will tell you why I didn't. Because during that initial portion of research, I saw that if you are going to be kayaking by yourself, especially in rapids, you have to learn this skill called the Eskimo roll. And the idea is that the whitewater kayaks, they're fully enclosed. Your legs are built into the kayak. You and the kayak are one thing. And if the kayak flips over and you are now underwater, you have to have the skill to roll it back upright so you are not going to drown. And I saw that, and I saw some people practicing it in a pool, and I went, you know what? Nope. That's not a thing that I'm interested in.
Wow. I'm wondering if I've ever had that experience where there's a hobby that I was interested in, and I started looking into it, and there was some kind of deal breaker along the way. Have you?
Yeah, the Eskimo roll was a deal breaker for me.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But what does that have to do with 115?
So if you were to go on the internet and start looking up kayaks and type in 115, you're going to start getting a ton of model numbers and serial numbers and just a lot of targeted advertising for kayaks with the model number 115. And what they're talking about is the depth from the bottom of the kayak or the canoe up to the rails. 11.5 is usually what they'll use for a very shallow one, for a one-person type of kayak, super shallow, 11.5 inches.
Nice. Cool. All right, you just asked me right before we started recording why it looks like I'm in a different location. Now, just before we started recording, I sat down and I tried to count out all of the different locations you and I have recorded the podcast from. So, Josh, I want you to hold up your fingers and count how many locations you've recorded the podcast from.
How many locations have I recorded? Okay, so I've recorded from this desk, and then there was literally one time where I had to record in a closet because my in-laws were currently in the room that I'm in. So that's 2.
Okay.
I think that might be it. I don't think I've been on the road for any other ones.
So we've been doing this for almost 5 years, 115 episodes, and you've recorded all of those from your casita.
Yeah, that makes me sound super lame because you're just this globe-trotting maniac that's all over the place.
I've recorded it from Kuwait and Florida and Illinois and Louisiana and Utah and Idaho, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think I've recorded at least from 15 different locations. So here's yet another new one. Let me tell you about this one. So when I knew I had to come back to Louisiana for 3 months, I just needed a place to live. So I talked to my friends at church and asked if anybody had a bedroom that they could just rent out to a roommate. And they said, sure, you can rent a room with Melky. Now, I'd known Milky. He was a friend of mine. He'd asked me a couple years back. There was the Brigham Young University came to Louisiana for the Independence Bowl, and he's like, hey, I heard you can get military discount on tickets. Can you get me a ticket and so I can go with you to the bowl game? I was like, great. I got him a ticket, and he came along. We're just casual acquaintances, but when I asked him if I could rent his extra bedroom, he said, sure. So I'm in Milky's extra bedroom, but let me tell you about Milky. His name is Melchizedek Jean-Louis. He is a 49-year-old Haitian immigrant with dwarfism, whose first language is French.
Pass. There's too many things. There's too many things there. I'm going to save it for the end.
So he grew up and lived most of his life in Haiti. And he kind of has that like deep-rooted cultural gap of coming from a third world country. Like he's very frugal. He appreciates small things. The language barrier is profound. I don't speak any Creole. He speaks French and Creole and English, but it's his third language, and it is a very thick accent. But he's pretty good. So usually I can understand him, but a lot of the time I'm like, we're not connected. I didn't understand that. He didn't understand me. This ain't going in. I can't think of a way to bridge the gap. So I moved into his, he lives by himself in this apartment in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I moved into his extra bedroom, and I needed to go get some stuff from my storage unit, and I needed to buy a few things. And he asked if he could come with me to go to the store. So I brought him along, and I took him to my storage unit, and then I realized I had this problem. Alicia had finished packing the storage unit while I was deployed with all of our household goods are all in this storage unit.
Oh, so before you left, it was only half full, and that's where all your stuff went in. But then since then, somebody came and filled the other half, which is the front half. And so now you've got to unload half of it to even get at the crap you need.
Kinda. She was courteous enough to take my stuff out as she loaded it up and then put it in last. But it was it was still kind of stacked up and over in the corner and stuck in. This is a 10 by 10 by 20 storage unit, and we had filled it to the roof, to the door.
Nice. That's a lot of stuff.
Yes. And I wasn't cognizant of how much stuff it was until I was standing in front of it with someone from Haiti.
With someone who's very frugal, who appreciates the small things, and still has the perspective of coming from a third world country.
He fled Haiti after that terrible earthquake in 2008 or whatever it was, and came here as a refugee and has since become a naturalized citizen. But yeah, I was standing there looking at it and just feeling the enormity of how much physical possessions I own, and how, and especially to someone who's half my size, how much it must have just looked like to see it all in one place. And I was kind of embarrassed.
Okay, this is another of those opportunities when, after you opened it and you were staring at it for a second, if he had the look on his face like, holy crap, that's a lot of stuff, you needed to go, oh, wait, no, I think it's the next one down.
This is locker number 3. All right, so there's this profound language barrier, and here, there's been a bit of a cold snap. I assume it's been cold there. There's been snow all over the States.
Yeah, or before we go any farther, because you're just layering it so thick, I've got to start slicing at it or we'll never get through.
Okay.
There's this, you keep saying there's this enormous language barrier. So, Ben, he knows you're just renting this room temporarily, right? You're not engaged to this Haitian man. You're not in some kind of mafioso gang or anything now, right? There's nothing weird happening.
No, not yet, but there will be, of course. But for instance, I flush the toilet, and the toilet starts flushing, and a stream of water comes down the back of the seat and goes into the bowl, which is kind of nice as far as disasters go, that there's extra water coming from somewhere it shouldn't be coming from, but it goes directly into the bowl. All
right, immediately my brain says that the filler is not filling down, it's filling up, the spray's coming up? Or
no, the gasket between the tank and the bowl was deteriorating, and luckily the water was going directly into the bowl.
Got it. So that's something you can fix yourself.
Yes, but once we started messing with it, it got worse and it started going onto the floor. So we turn off the water, and him and I make a trip to the hardware store, and then we're...
That's the first thing you should have done. Man, it's like you've never even fixed a toilet.
Yeah, well, and he has the limitations of dwarfism, as in just his arms don't reach as high and as far in between. Like, for instance, if you're trying to unscrew the screw in the toilet bowl that holds the tank on the top, you need to reach in the top and you need to reach underneath, and he can't do that.
Okay, yes, this is true, and I'm very uncomfortable talking about his physical limitations. Is he okay? Did you get his consent before we started talking about him on the podcast this way?
Yeah, so we're friends, and I'm talking openly. He's not my first dwarf friend, and friend with dwarfism, and I'm talking openly about some of the limitations of it. So we're fixing the toilet, and the bolts are all rusted out, and the gasket's all gone to heck. So I'm putting this thing all back together. And he's very appreciative of my help. And I've just realized some of the limitations, and it's making me thankful. Like this is what I'm getting. I got somebody that fled a third world country after an earthquake and has dwarfism and lives a very happy, fulfilled life with very few earthly possessions.
Meanwhile, I had to spend an afternoon moving my second sectional couch so I could get at my magic cards because I needed my modern deck for F&M.
Yes. You summed it up perfectly. That's the experience I've been having living with this friend here.
Aw. Well, that's the good message to take away from all that.
Yeah.
So you're such a ray of sunshine. Like, how are we friends? Like, I am not anything like that.
Yeah, but you summed it up pretty well.
No, I summed it up pretty well because I'm over here being cynical about it. Like, you see the code of the Matrix when you watch movies you don't like. I'm over here like, oh, he's going to do another one of those thankful to be alive and gracious for all the things that I have kind of speeches.
Yeah. So I would be happy to get rid of at least half of that stuff in that storage unit, but I'm probably going to find a place for it and put it all in there and realize I don't have enough and get some more.
So I will say this, I have drawn the line at a storage unit. I will not pay for an off-site storage of my stuff. If I reach the point where I'm like, oh, I really need a place to store this stuff, my solution is to get rid of other stuff first.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. We don't have a storage unit because we have too much stuff. We have a storage unit because we don't have a house.
Oh, sure. Go ahead and try to walk that one back now, Ben.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm here in Louisiana. I was getting ready to sign up for this one internship that I was going to take that was going to lead to this job that would just be a job as a government contractor. And then, like a bolt of lightning, out of nowhere, I was talking to a stranger in the airport, as you do. And
as nobody does. Nobody does that. Nobody talks to strangers in airports. That's insanity to me.
All right, I better introduce the idea a little bit better. So I was waiting for my flight after I'd come back from the Middle East to go see my family, and there was a person sitting across from me by themselves, a woman wearing a jacket that showed that said cyber.org on it. So I Googled it, and it was an organization that looked really, really interesting to me. And our plane wasn't for a while, and I thought I could talk to this person about this because I really want to know about this organization. So I chatted her up and found out that she is the executive director of this organization, and she would be willing to take me on as an intern. So I completely changed what I'm probably going to do with my life, and I'm going to potentially go work for this nonprofit organization that creates cyber education for children in K through 12, trying to help them become the cyber security professionals of tomorrow.
This whole story just blows my mind in so many ways because there's so many things that had to line up, and not just about like the logistics of that situation, not just about the where you decided to sit and what plane she decided to take, and the fact that she got there early enough that the connecting flight was early enough that you could sit there for a while to develop a relationship with this person. But just the fact that she's also the kind of person that's willing to entertain stupid questions from complete strangers about her work. Like, I would have... I'm not even lying to you, Ben. If I was sitting in a chair and someone asked me more than 2 questions about my job unsolicited in an airport while I was trying to listen to a book, I would have gotten up and walked away from them. Like, just non-apologetically, no words even spoken. I owe this person nothing. The fact that you somehow turned that into a job is insanity.
Just this week, she that trip she was on her way to Washington, D.C. to meet with senators about funding, and this is the kind of thing that high up people in government want to talk about to their constituents. This is about educating children to become the cybersecurity professionals of tomorrow. About keeping America ahead.
That's got so many buzzwords and such great potential. Yeah, I can see politicians being all in on this kind of thing.
Yes. So when she got back, I looked her up and she asked me to come over to the center, and I went and toured. They have this great they have this production studio. They got 3D printers. They got a whole locker full of swag that they do when they go to like conferences and set up a booth. They got a media production studio that they use for creating content. There's graphic designers. There's software producers. Oh my gosh, Josh, I'm so excited about having a job where I get to do creative production instead of just
is this like management. So what is the job here? Like, so because previously you were going to be one of those slimy, besuited industrial military complex guys that were selling weapons to the military and just making money hand over fist. Now I have no clear idea of what it is that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I'll be working at a nonprofit. I'll be doing the intern thing for a little while, where you just, hey, here's the intern, give him the extra jobs, and I'll get to learn everything. But I assume at some point they'll either be like, hey, we got a job for you, we want you to do this, or you're not in the budget, move along.
Well, okay. So you don't even know. Wait. This internship, is this a paid internship at least? Like, is this a real job, or is this just you volunteering somewhere?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked about this. I think after this kind of thing goes wrong enough times, the American people demand accountability from their elected officials. And the thing is, veterans out on the street, unemployed, homeless.
That's a thing, yeah.
I'm not in the kind of career field where that's really a danger, but you can't set something up for some veterans and not set it up for others. So sometimes you get a benefit that's for everyone that you don't really need.
Okay.
In this case, what they've done is they've created a program called DoD Skill Bridge, which is at the end of your military career, they allow you to take an internship while you're still on active duty with the military, with military insurance, military housing allowance, military pay and benefits, but working for a industry partner.
Oh, okay. So there's this like probationary period almost to try to go like break your way into the civilian world, but you're still getting a paycheck.
Get some skills, get some experience in the private sector that helps smooth the transition from military to the private sector. It's probably a lot more relevant if you just spent 20 years as an infantry troop or a tank driver or something like that doesn't really have a good analog in the private sector.
Okay.
But I was doing cybersecurity. It's not real hard for me to make the transition.
You were on cybersecurity staff. I mean, did you do any real work, or were you just doing emails and PowerPoints all day?
I like that you're cynical about this. I gotta admit, Josh, I've had more than a few moments where I do that, stare at my belly button and go, do I even know anything? But in any apparatus, there are people at every level. And yeah, there's guys at the bottom pounding keyboards, configuring servers, but there's also guys that understand what those guys are doing and manage them, and they need those too.
I remember having this realization when I was... I'm going to try to dumb this down as much as I can. Computer science. I got my degree in computer science. I was coding. Like I was making things happen on computers, right? And one of the classes was talking about this new crazy concept called object-oriented programming. Any computer science or computery person that's listening is laughing right now because that's how everything
is done now.
Yes, everything is that. And I took one class in it and nobody took it seriously.
Right. We were that's a problem with the academia. Anyway, yeah, so I came out with a relatively relevant skill set, but I still get to participate in this program. We'll get to go have an unpaid internship for a few months because I'll still be on military pay and benefits for the intervening time.
That is, all kidding aside, like I hope that this pans out and turns into something that can be long-term, that logistically can sustain your existence in this world, like this capitalistic society that we live in long-term. because all of the messages that we've had about it, it's clear that you have a passion for this. And so I hope that this job is, one, what you think it is, and two, it can support your livelihood.
I agree with you on both counts. Josh, I want to give you an update on the 3D printer saga. So if you remember from episode 114, for Christmas, my wife and I had chosen to get the kids a 3D printer. We ordered it, and instead of a 3D printer, we had a roll of construction mesh show up at our house.
That's like saying that for Christmas we bought our kids a new minivan. But yeah, okay, sure. It's for the kids. Go ahead. Keep going.
So we sent the... Josh, I appreciate your love of quirky hobbies, but I honestly think my kids would have used this more than me, and it wasn't my idea to get it.
Would have. This is all past tense. That's not what I want to hear. Come on now.
Yeah, okay, so like I said last time, I went into Amazon software and just chose the option that I wasn't satisfied with the delivery, and they said, what's the problem? I said it was the wrong item, and they said, leave it out on your porch tomorrow, a UPS driver will pick it up, and then follow this step. I'll put a screenshot of this in the show notes. It shows 5 discrete steps: initiated, picked up, received, refund issued, and refund credited. And it had dates on them. Something has changed since the last time I updated this, and that's that the 5 steps the progress meter keeps moving, but sometimes nothing has happened, and the dates keep changing above the little bubbles on the timeline.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's not what you want to see in a robust, help ticket system.
Yeah, but I love the brilliance of this, of keeping me from calling them or pestering them. They're doing whatever they're doing, but they have not asked me a single question, and it still gives me a dollar amount and a date that I'm going to get the money back, even though they haven't done it yet. Now, Josh, if you go on Amazon and order something right now, what's the soonest it could be on your porch?
Ooh, if I was really willing to pay for it, I could probably have it tomorrow.
Right. They know this. I do not know why there are 20 days on their timeline between when it left my porch and when they count it as received.
So, I think you probably broke a dollar threshold. You're in a completely different process than the other ones are. I've heard nasty things on the internet that if you quote unquote return something to Amazon and it costs less than $10, they just throw it in the trash and send you a new one.
I also wonder if there's a queue that happens in the month of December and it's just backlogged.
That's also a good possibility. But I'm convinced that you are working in a much smaller office because of the high dollar figure associated with this product.
Yeah, so the status this week was updated and it says, ! Refund issuance is delayed. Your return is processed, but the refund is delayed. Don't worry, we're working on it. Your refund will be available soon. Again, they still haven't asked me any questions.
The next email that you're going to get is your refund was canceled because you tried to send us back chicken wire after we sent you a 3D printer.
I sure hope they do their homework better than that. Because the driver took a picture of chicken wire when he dropped it off on my porch.
We'll see.
And that's in their system.
Ben, look me in the eye. It's a bureaucracy.
I'm worried that exactly what you just said is going to happen.
So in the meantime, doing the responsible thing, you have not repurchased another multiple $1,000 3D printer. Not until you get the original investment back.
Yeah. But again, this website, I'll put a screenshot in the show. It's brilliant in that it's kind of kept me from pestering them about it. The little line keeps moving. It keeps telling me everything's going to happen. Whoever designed this understood human psychology. They know what's happening here. They have a lot of my money that they haven't given back yet. And I'm really motivated to want that money back But this is keeping me from doing anything about it.
This is big business. I'll tell you that right now because I work at an accounting firm. And I have spent no less than 2 hours with the other management staff talking about nothing except what can we do to stop clients from calling us all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they sat around and designed this form with that in mind, to maximize the use of human psychology to dissuade me from contacting them.
Yeah, or just to give you that just enough level of assurance that something is happening that you feel as if you're being taken care of, even if they're not.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I was going to come on the podcast tonight and tell you that the status hadn't changed in 2 weeks since the last time we recorded an episode, but sometime between like 2 days ago and today, it did actually change.
Amazon Returns, sponsor the podcast.
Let's do a Bad at Magic segment. This one's kind of interesting. It came out of nowhere. When I was home over the holiday, I was with my son, and we were doing a draft, vintage cube draft on Magic Online, which are awesome if you play Magic.
The best way. It is the best way to play Magic, in my opinion.
It's just great. So we were doing a cube draft, and we were waiting for the next pick, and I was looking at the card Chrome Mox, and they had the original art of Chrome Mox. So I zoomed in on it, and there's it almost looks like an M.C. Escher sphere, and you can see a reflection in it that's kind of vague and undefined.
So I always saw that, this is real insider baseball because who cares, but I see that art, and I honestly think it's Karn. I think it's an early iteration of Karn the Golem standing by a window.
This is a magical kind of thing, and other things like this exist, and I'll tell you what it is, and I love that it came to this. So my son and I started debating it long enough, and we couldn't come to an agreement because it was just vague enough to not lend itself to any certain conclusion. And if you look at the art for Chrome Mox, you'll see this. It's not clear.
Yeah. Like, it's clear. Well, hang on. It's clear that whoever did the art had an idea in mind of what that reflection was and who in the story it was. But they put it on there, and it's not clear enough for us, the people that consume it, to know. So then there's just speculation.
I love that you said that, Josh. So, like you said, the person that did the art must have had something specific in mind. So my son and I were trying to figure it out, and the discussion escalated to the point where he Googled it. And because this card is, 20 years old? 25 years old?
Something like that, yeah.
This debate all happened a long time ago, almost long enough ago that it's had time to maybe have 2 or 3 generations, because it happened before this kind of debate happened on the internet.
That's true. It was printed as a card, and then people are opening it like, what do you think this art is? Like old timers like us actually.
Yeah, and it maybe got published in some old magazine or something like that. The speculation, or it was on like a message board or something like that.
Ooh, I can't. So I don't have time to explain what those two things are. Gen Z, go look it up.
So my son and I stumbled across a few of these discussions, and it became increasingly clear that this debate has never been settled.
Okay.
There was no definitive answer.
The artist never weighed in. The artist never came in and said, everybody shut up, it's this.
So my son goes, I know, I'll ask the artist. I'm like, what?
I mean, that's a sensible solution. They put the name of the artist at the bottom of every Magic card.
So the artist's name is Donato Giancola. I think that's an Italian last name. I don't know if he's American or whatever, but my son didn't tell me, but later on he forwarded me the reply from Donato Giancola where he had asked him, so, hey, my dad and I were looking at Chrome Mox, and we couldn't come to a conclusion. What's the debate? I want to read you verbatim Donato Giancola's reply. He says, hello, Jairus. That is an old story, and I no longer provide details about what my intentions were in the art for Chrome Mox and Mirari. The speculations are all so much better than what we intended, and there isn't any answer out there I want to endorse more than another. Enjoy the artwork. Happy New Year, Donato.
Okay. 2 things immediately leap to my mind when it says that. One, that's the most non-answer answer I've ever heard.
I love it.
It's art is art, and it's whatever you want it to be, precious lamb. And he just didn't want to get into it. He's going to say, oh, it's character X in front of a chalkboard. And then he's afraid that your son's going to email him back, be like, no, it looks more like this. And shut up. I can totally see that happening.
But we both love. Okay, so that was one. What's the other?
The other one was that, maybe there really isn't. Maybe as he was painting this thing, he just had a shiny chrome bowl in front of him for reference, and his wife or his girlfriend was standing in some negligee in front of a window. It was like, that's a great reflection, and just painted that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what he's kind of saying here is the truth is much less interesting than the fan theories.
Okay. Yeah.
This wasn't the first time I'd heard this. I can't remember the exact one. I'm going to make one up that I think is likely to have been it. I want to say it's one of the lead singers from the Eagles about the meaning of the lyrics of Hotel California that have enough nuance and vagueness that when people listen to it, they want to speculate about what the true meaning that the artist intended was. And this debate hangs in the annals of history and has become so great that when someone actually asks the artist, so, hey, here's all the fan theories about what you meant in the lyrics for this song, the artist goes, that's probably better than what I intended, so I'm not going to tell you what my idea was.
So this is a total tangent, but you've heard the song Chop Suey by System of a Down, right?
Yeah.
That song has a very famous bridge where, I mean, it's just a crazy go nuts song the whole time, but there's this bridge where he goes into this very poetic description of forgiveness and like talking about his father and all this. And people ask, like, where did that come from? It's so artistic. And they are on record, like in an interview saying, we needed something to sing during the bridge. And we reached up, grabbed a random book, opened to a random page, picked a random passage, and just sung that.
What?
Yes.
Awesome.
Just off the shelf.
Okay. But again, that's the kind of thing that, like, if they never actually answered that question and you're sitting around trying to figure out, you'll probably come up with more creative, interesting things than the actual truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for the artist to recognize that and say, you know what? I don't want to put a quash to all this creativity. I don't think that's cynical.
That's this is why we have such a great podcast, Ben, because you're finding this wonder in this guy's total non-committal answer, and I'm over here like that's the perfect email to shut down any further emails from this person.
Okay. You reminded me of another, though, that I want to say that I've never talked about. I don't know the name of the artist. I apologize. The song is Closing Time. Closing time.
Oh, yeah,
time for you to go out to the... Okay, so I heard this interview where the artist talks about how the lyrics have a secondary meaning. I think he says it's his intended meaning. That instead of it being about people out at a bar trying to find someone to go home with, it's about being at the maternity ward at the hospital after his child has been born. And it's about taking them home.
Oh.
So if you listen to that song again with that in your mind and think about it being about waiting until your brothers and sisters come and you don't have to go home but you can't stay here, and it all being about bringing a baby home from the hospital, it's really great.
This is why I suffered in English class in school, Ben, because I was a senior in high school. We were reading Watership Down. It's about bunnies that can talk. And my English teacher swore up and down that it was laced with all of this deep and profound meaning. I just had to look for it, and all I saw was stupid bunnies talking.
Yeah.
While we're on Bad at Magic, because we so rarely get to do Bad at Magic, something happened where in Wizards of the Coast, in the business side of Magic, and I want to talk about that just for a little bit.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro?
Both. Well, this is the thing. So yes, it happened at Hasbro. Hasbro had a huge round of layoffs right before the holidays. Like, right before the holidays.
Corporate parent company.
The corporate parent...
of the company that makes Magic the Gathering.
So Hasbro, we've talked about it before. Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast owns a couple of IPs. The most famous ones are Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering. But we have also discussed the fact that Hasbro, as a company, has lost money hand over fist for years now because all of its intellectual properties suck. And... Wizards
they're
of the
making
Coast,
Monopoly and Nerf, and yeah.
But Wizards of the Coast has consistently grown its revenue base and has been supporting the rest of Hasbro. Like, I went to their financial statements. Wizards of the Coast is like the only segment of Hasbro's business that makes money. Everybody else is losing money or
and it's a significant portion of their overall revenues. It's like 20% or something.
In the 20%, yes. And so when Hasbro comes down and says, we're going to do a round of layoffs. That's not surprising. This is a standard corporate thing that corporations do, immediately drops their overhead costs, which shoots up their bottom line revenue so it looks good to shareholders. It's a classic short-term, like, this is what we can do. We can hit this emergency panic button, and then we look good for another year. It buys us more time.
Because they posted quarter 4 2023 loss on their profit and loss statement.
Or something, whatever. Like, they're responding to the fact that they're not doing great and they need to do something to satisfy their shareholders. The problem is that these layoffs were across the board, including a significant number of employees at Wizards of the Coast, again, the only part of their company that's making any money. So
yeah, it kind of defies logic. Unless you're worried as a company, you'd be like, I don't know, about having a favorite child.
I get that. So you don't want your other revenue streams to feel like but at the same time, that's too touchy-feely for corporations.
But this is a good example of why we had to have the Space Force or the Air Force. You know, you said it best on this podcast. They needed to have their own budget.
Yeah. So when Hasbro, maybe that's just a lesson to everybody. It doesn't matter if you by yourself, Wizards of the Coast, are doing good. If Daddy Hasbro suffers, you're going to suffer too.
Right, because he doesn't want to have a favorite child.
So what? You need to go help the other revenue streams? That doesn't even make sense.
Maybe. I don't know. They could come up with a Monopoly.
So that's
Lord of the Rings version. It's already been done. I don't know.
Let's put that speculation aside. Here's my problem: is that I really like the products that Wizards of the Coast creates, and I've really appreciated all of the work. Like it's still, they've made a lot of changes, and there's a lot of things that I was very shaky on. But this is
toxic. They're killing the goose to get the golden eggs.
Well, now hang on. What I'm talking about is over the last handful of years, when Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast and we started seeing changes happen to the game Magic the Gathering as a direct result, I was very uncommon for my personality, but I was trepidatious about it. I was a little glasses half empty about the whole thing. It's a crazy concept, I know.
Weird.
Nothing like me. But I've been happily surprised that they have maintained the quality, and they've done a couple of things that I can't help but agree like that. Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate some of those.
Got it. Just the corporate overlords that don't know much about the game or the property, just their pressure to perform and increase and improve have made some good business decisions. Maybe greenlighted some initiatives that otherwise might not have been.
I'm actually not putting it on that. What I'm putting it on is Hasbro as the corporation is putting pressure on Wizards of the Coast. Hey, you need to make more money. And it forced them to be more creative. It forced them out of their complacency to look at and figure out ways that they could do that in a way that was clear that they still cared about the legitimacy of the game. It would have been super easy for them to print stupid, overpowered cards and just flood the game with a bunch of nonsense and just destroy the whole thing.
Kill it and drive it into the ground.
Exactly, but they didn't. They did it in a way that that showed a lot of care. So, okay, good on them for that. So let's forget about the layoffs. What I'm thinking about now is people got fired at Wizards of the Coast. Okay, let's speculate for a second on what that looks like. So on one end of the spectrum, it's Wizards of the Coast recognizing, okay, even internal to our organization, even if we are super lean, even if we're already kind of thin, there's probably some deadwood that we can get rid of here. There's probably a handful of people that either aren't pulling their weight or they're in a segment that hasn't been doing well, or we can turn something around, whatever. And like gives us an opportunity.
Before you dive into that, 5 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, did any of that enter your sphere?
What, the layoffs of Wizards of the Coast?
Yeah, like, I don't know, you watched a video by the professor on Tolarian Community Ecology talking about it. Like, how did it enter your sphere?
So I saw some news articles about it when it first came up because
articles.
I'm a weirdo that way. And yes, the professor at Tolarian Community College did one. All of the talking heads in the Magic sphere did a video about it. And frankly, I have a hard time watching those because the professor, man, you're great. You have great insight into the game. You're an English major, and I don't know if you've ever worked at a giant corporate bureaucracy. So when you start speculating on what's happening on the internal side,
that's kind of how I feel about it sometimes.
When these talking heads start throwing darts at a board and they're missing horribly, I can't keep listening.
So I had this weird thing that happens on X where you are even closer than that. I saw a tweet of a guy that I follow that used to be a professional player that had gone to work for Wizards of the Coast and announced on X that he was leaving because he was one of the layoffs. And that felt even closer. And then I saw the reactions of the other players that are friends with him about that, kind of acting duly outraged about corporate layoffs. But I don't know what he was like as an employee. I know he's a good Magic player. I like his streaming videos. But I don't.
Right,
maybe...
and we don't know where he worked in there. There's so many like internal departments. Was he part of the play testing group?
I assume he was R&D. Yeah.
Well, you say R&D, like you hear Mark Rosewater talks about in his podcast all the different phases of development that exists in their company to make this stuff happen,
and that they've invented. because of how great the game is. They've invented so many different ways to imagine things and then flesh them out and turn them into reality, and how all the stages and involvement and planning and phasing.
Right. And so this is where I was going with that, is with this corporate push from behind, they have done things that honestly they wouldn't have done before, and I kind of appreciate a lot of. So good on them. They're doing it right. Then the layoffs hit. And so there's the spectrum of, okay, good or bad. How is this going to be? On the absolute best case scenario, it's just them cleaning out some of the deadwood and legitimately lowering costs without any productivity or product suffering. Okay. But on the other end of that spectrum, it was just Hasbro saying we're cutting 10% period dot, like fire, 150 people. Even if Wizards of the Coast comes back and says we're too lean for that. Everybody here is critically important. Like, has Wizards of the Coast internally suffered because of these forced layoffs from Big Daddy Hasbro?
Wow, that's a really tough question, because what would that look like?
How would that affect us? How would that impact us? How would we wouldn't even feel it for like a couple of years from now?
Exactly. On Mark Rosar's podcast, he always talks about how he's always 5 sets ahead of us, and he has to keep all these secrets because he knows what they're working on now is not going to come out for a year.
Right. So if that's what happened, if they made all these cuts in the company and they're suffering and they're spinning their wheels and just desperately trying to figure out how to make things work, we're not going to know that for like another 2 or 3 years.
I'd like to think that they do what you usually do in those kinds of things. It gives you a chance to really go over everything you're working on, figure out what's the most important, and focus on that. So I don't think we'll really feel the impact, but maybe they're working on some new initiative or some crazy kind of play or alternative format or touring thing that they're like, not while we're in the middle of layoffs. Let's not worry about that right now.
So now I'm going to take another abstract step away from this whole situation, and I'm going to ask you, Ben. Are we too close? Are we too vested in Magic? Can they ever do anything so egregious that would make you stop playing? Because I asked myself that question when this all went down, and I don't know I don't know.
I saw another version of that same question this week on one of the Magic subreddits I followed. There was a user, some rando on the internet, that said, Wizards, if you're listening, please stop producing so many new products so fast. I don't want to vote with my wallet.
Interesting. He just wants to love the game unambiguously like he did years ago.
But I don't want to have to stop playing to show you that I mean it.
Interesting. Okay. There's a guy at my F&M play group that he sat down. He's like, hey, I have this really cool commander deck, but it's 100% proxied. Do you mind if I play it? And so there's 2 questions. One is, okay, I had him fan it out like, okay, how proxied are we talking? If you have full power 9 in your deck, I'm going to tell you to, go pound sand. But it wasn't. It was completely reasonable, so he played with it. But here's the other question: is like, this guy put together what would have been a $200 or $300 deck.
Proxied means he printed them out on his printer or wrote them out with a pen and just pretended he owns the cards that he doesn't own.
Even better, he found one of those playing card printing services where they all had custom backs, but instead of the bicycle cards on the front, you just had Magic cards printed on them. And so they were like legit cardstock, tear-resistant cards. He didn't even put them in sleeves. He didn't have to. And
someone out there produces basically counterfeit Magic cards that are not trying to masquerade as Magic cards?
Basically, yeah. He just found a service. They did not care what he printed on either side of those cards. And he had a full deck that would have, if he had bought the Magic cards, it would have been $200 or $300. But he got the whole thing for like $20, he said.
Ooh, you just made me feel kind of dirty, Josh. This is in like the lawful evil space. Like, am I, as a player, supposed to care somehow about how my opponent obtained his cards? Am I supposed to be an enforcer for the man?
So there's another player at our group that has a handful of proxies and even says, I have a couple of proxies in my deck. Is that okay? And at first I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Until I found out he was proxying the most annoying cards to play against ever.
But why are you making your decision based on that? What's
that's
the real question that's being asked?
Yeah, you're right. So this is a trading card game, and me as a player, I am not ever going to proxy a card. I'm not. I have in my bag right now 99 cards of a commander deck that's put together, but I have yet to find somebody who owns the commander that I want for this deck. I have the deck completely built minus one card, and I cannot play it, and I've had it for weeks. And I'm not going to proxy it. I'm not going to proxy it. I'm not going to play it until I get the physical card. But that's a choice.
Because, like you said, it's a trading card game. Part of the game is actually obtaining the rarer artifacts.
Yeah,
which we talked about last time.
It's one of those stupid Transformer cards that were a limited run.
This is a really interesting psychological thing that you were doing, where you were making a decision. You're like, well, I don't want to just be an enforcer for the man, so I'm going to make my decision on whether or not to enforce this rule that I can enforce based on if I'm annoyed by what they're doing, rather than if I have some kind of pure adherence to the idea of playing against someone that's also collected the cards.
Well, here's the difference, and this is the reason I played the guy that had the annoying cards first. He proxied 5 cards. They were all terrible. And then the second guy said, oh, I have an entirely proxied deck. And I said, fan it out for me. And I looked at him, and I was fine with it because he's playing a normal deck. The guy that was proxying cards, he was proxying Cyclonic Rift. He was proxying Force of Will. He was proxying Supreme Verdict. Like, he's proxying things that just, that one, the reason they're so expensive is because they're incredibly good in the game. If he's proxying stuff just to round out the deck, to put in some synergy stuff, yeah, dude, we're all here just to have fun. No, he was proxying to take his deck from a 7 to a 9.
I think we have different versions of this scenario just described all over our life. Like, okay, there are so many rules on our lives and our existence that we're constantly in violation of at least 100 of them. And for the most part, we just want a bit of grace from the universe. Like, I want to be able to drive 5 miles over the speed limit and not get pulled over everywhere I go. Right? Don't we all?
I do, dude. I do 7 consistently. Never get pulled over.
But if a guy in a business suit and a douchey car cuts you off and goes past you, you want him to get the speeding ticket for going the same speed you were going.
That's fair. That's fair. Where's the cop when you need him? Yeah, I've said that more than once.
Right.
Okay. You got me there, yes.
So, if you want, and it really is a utilitarian versus a deontological point of view here.
Hang on a second.
You're talking about the utility of this situation, and I'm talking about the deontology of the situation. Is there a pure reason to object to your opponent's deck?
Well, now let me flip that on you, because I don't think I'm being outrageous with what I'm saying. Like, I'm not proxying any cards, and somebody asked me, hey, do you mind if I break the rules? And then I am allowed to say yes or no. And most of the time I say, yeah, sure, go for it. Expecting them to not take too much of an advantage of me allowing them to break the rules.
Sure, yes. As you meant, basically what you're saying is there's an inequality that's created. When you have gone to the trouble to gather all of the cards and play against someone, and they haven't, you're allowing an inequality.
Yes, exactly. And also, I am following the rules. I'm the guy that's driving the speed limit, and people are zooming around me.
But these rules can be changed. That's what you're doing at the beginning, is you're agreeing on the rules. You could just say, all right, we're playing a game.
All right, we've gone far afield. This goes back to my original question. Can Wizards do anything so bad that you would stop buying cards, that you would stop supporting the company and then just start proxying or just playing online for free?
So as a hypothetical question, the answer to that is, of course they can.
There's something. There's always something that they could do.
As long as the current cadre of a dozen long old timers that love the game and have a deep connection and commitment to it are around, I don't think it's gonna.
I'll tell you what, Ben. I was sitting at one of those panels at MagicCon Vegas, and it was 4 people were on stage answering questions. It was Mark Rosewater and 3 people that were 15 years younger than me. And I'm not trying to be ageist, and I'm not trying to freak out or anything, and I know they had just as much dedication to this game as I do, but I'm looking at them like, I don't think these kids have ever played with some of the old school stuff. I don't think they remember a 3-3 for 2 being absolutely outstandingly broken. Like, how can they lead the future of Magic if they don't know these things?
It's a good question. Again, another question that kind of leads to these big implications. Like, how do we turn the world over to our youth if they didn't have to walk uphill to school in the snow?
Oh, no.
Ways?
Oh, you're right. I'm the guy. I just did it. I'm the old bastard that's, like, putting up roadblocks for the younger generation. I'm so sorry. For everyone that was on that panel, you've got it. Your hand's on the wheel. Please take us to a place that we all can enjoy. I have every faith in you. Dang it, Ben. I'm not even joking how much you just made me reevaluate my own position and tear out some concrete that I thought was fine.
There's this great scene in the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney and Anna Kendrick. Have you seen it?
I have seen that. That's a good movie.
So he represents the old school, the old way of thinking, and he defends his ways so vociferously. I am the old way of doing it. It's the only way to do it. It's the right way to do it, and it will never change. And she represents the youth, the young thinking, and specifically their business. They're like helping conduct corporate layoffs in a way that allows businesses to distance themselves from the firing of the people so that it doesn't cause a lot of problems. So he flies around everywhere going to businesses and firing people in a way that's... He's a smooth talker.
He's very good at making them feel okay about the decision.
Yeah. She comes in as a young person with her phone and her texting, and she wants to do it remotely over video conferencing and stuff like that. And he shows her that, like, no, you have to do it the old way or it doesn't count. And I think the brilliant thing about that movie and why it works so well is it isn't about making us believe that either one of those things is the ultimate complete truth.
Now, they did an excellent job of making it clear that George Clooney was a dinosaur and that it was going to change whether he liked it or not. But at the same time, Anna Kendrick had a lot to learn from him about the process and about how it could go and ways to make it better.
Perfect. Yes, exactly.
So that's what's going to happen. You think Mark Rosewater is just pouring his knowledge into these poor kids?
And there's things that Mark Rosewater is bound in his ways about and will never change and maybe needs to move on. But hopefully a few young bucks will get some of his wisdom and knowledge from him and then help revolutionize the game in new ways that we haven't anticipated yet.
Okay, I'm going to turn this into a joke for a second. Of that panel, Ben, you and I have both listened to Mark Rosewater's podcast. Mark Rosewater is one of the old school nerds where, like, he can't talk. The man cannot speak. Like, he says 3 words and you're like, oh man, I can't even stand listening to this nerd. And it's just something about the way that he speaks, his cadence, his voice.
I know what it is.
What is it?
He kind of has a high-pitched nasally voice, but he also does a thing where he likes to repeat his ideas 2 and 3 times.
Yes. So there's a lot of things that he does. Listen to his podcast, listeners, for 5 minutes. You'll get it like, oh man, this guy's an insufferable nerd. But the other 3 people on that stage in that panel, they were not. They were very well-spoken young men and women. And so, I don't know. I don't know if I want somebody that wasn't bullied for being a nerd being in charge of magic.
Josh, I'd like to do a bad Italian real quick. This is one that I heard from an Italian while I was in Kuwait. I love it. It's an idiom. The idiom is buono come il pane.
Buono come il pane.
It means as good as bread. And it's usually said to describe a person.
A person is as good as bread.
A person is as good as bread. This is how much the Italians love their food. A phrase that we...
Okay. Now, hang on. You solved it for me, because in my mind, I'm like, what? Bread isn't all that great. But you're right. These are Italians. They have a totally different view on bread.
Yeah. We have a similar saying. We might say he has a heart of gold, or he's good as gold. Aww. But the Italians say, buono come il pane. This person is as good as bread. It's usually said of a person who's known for being kind and generous. They'll put their hand on you, put their hands together, and say, "Lui buono come il pane."
This is the second time in like 10 minutes you have rocked the foundations of my understanding of the universe, because you just said like, oh, us as Americans, we would compare them to a precious metal, something that has monetary value. These Italians, these old world people, would compare them and say, this person is as good as this wonderful meal that I've shared with friends and family. Wow.
Something that gives you nourishment and sustainment.
Ben, we've got it wrong, don't we?
I think so. I love it. Josh, what are you reading right now?
You know what I'm reading right now.
You're reading The Wheel of Time. Have you advanced the next book?
Oh, okay. So I even put this in the subreddit because I had to. We recorded episode 114, and I had like 30 minutes left in book 4, The Shadow Rising, and like I was so mad at myself that I couldn't finish it before because I wanted so much to say on the podcast. Yep, finished book 4. I'm on to book 5, but I didn't, and I had to, between the time we recorded and posted the episode, I had finished.
It'll all come out in the wash. You'll get through 5 faster before it's been 2 episodes.
Hopefully. Well, I'm like probably approaching the halfway point of book 5.
What's it called?
The Fires of Heaven.
Is this the long one? One of them is really, really thick.
One of them in the middle is very thick. It's either this one or the next one, The Lord of Chaos. I think this might be the really long one, and I'll tell you why. Because I always remember this. In this book, there is this climactic third act, like halfway through the book. And then the book keeps going for some reason. And then there's another climactic third act. I think the deal is, like, if this...
Yeah, it's 2 third acts. Don't ask me how they did that. Fuzzy math.
No, it has 2 arcs. And if this story had been split between those 2 arcs, one book would have been only a little bit shorter, and the next book would have been like 120 pages. And so I think that's why they crammed them together.
Okay. Huh. I wonder if that was a publishing anomaly. Like, he kind of wrote 2 books, and they just stuck them together.
Well, after he died and Brandon Sanderson took over, like his Robert Jordan's intent was to write 1 book to wrap up the series, and then Brandon Sanderson broke it into 3 books that are all just as thick as all the other books. So, like, it was going to be a huge book. Now, here's off of the logistics. I've been doing my best to actually put in some kind of interesting thought about the Wheel of Time as my 5th or 6th read through of the thing. This one, what really struck me was how far the author goes out of his way to point out differences in culture. Now, specifically, the main character has romantic entanglements with multiple females through the book. There's a lot of polyamory that happens. We don't have to get into that. But one of the people that he's with currently right now, they had a very frank discussion about having accidentally slept together. I'm going to leave it at that. And so then he has the conversation like, okay, well, now we're going to get married because by my customs, like these are the steps that we have to take. This is not allowed to happen outside of wedlock, so we're going to get married now. And then she comes back like, well, from my culture, you don't even have the right to ask me to be married. I'm supposed to ask you. And so there's absolutely no chance any of that's going to happen.
Ooh, that's an interesting impasse.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, is they had this very in-depth discussion about the differences in their 2 cultures and upbringings, where they were raised, on how a relationship proceeds between a man and a woman, and how they end up getting married and stay together. And it just got me thinking about how I'm so blind to that in my own reality. Like, walking around the world, or walking around the United States. Yeah, sure, there's different cultures, like here versus back east versus down south, but there is a lot of universality.
Yeah, it's a lot different than being a Haitian immigrant who fled his country being destroyed by an earthquake.
Yeah, exactly. I have absolutely no perspective. If somebody was to come to me and I was just going to like ask them out to dinner and they get slapped in my face because that's incredibly rude in their culture, I would have absolutely no understanding of that kind of a difference.
Yeah,
and
I just came from Kuwait watching my commander try to talk to men that didn't even want her to enter the room.
Yeah, that's a difficult like cultural barrier that you have to overcome.
Okay, you reminded me of something. I'm going to take a tangent. I'm not reading anything right now because my Audible credit hasn't come yet, and I've read through all my books. I've been catching up on my podcast. Since we recorded episode 114, we just had my 25th wedding anniversary. My wife and I celebrated 25 years of being married together.
Aw, happy anniversary, Ben.
Thank you.
Of those years being together, how many of those years have you been together?
Minus 3 or 2.
So it's your 25th/23rd wedding anniversary.
Just like you that celebrate your 10th/11th wedding anniversary.
I think I'm pushing 12 or 13 now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but yours for a completely different reason. Yours is more than mine, and mine is less. So over the course of, those 2 weeks where we were just kind of, it was on our mind. We were thinking, this is our silver wedding anniversary. We sell, the nuances of the decimal-based number system. The number 25 has a lot of significance in its relativity to the length of a human life, all those kinds of things. So we did this. We went out to a special dinner together. We spent some time together. We got each other some gifts, and occasionally we just sat down and kind of talked and reflected on our relationship in a way that we don't generally.
Oh, so you did like a performance feedback.
No, not at all. No, heck no.
And no to all of your dirty implications.
So what she during the course of one of these conversations, one of the things my wife said to me was something so fascinating. She talked about how we had to come to realization in the first year of marriage. The way she described it was that you both go into it with the default assumption that the new family you're creating will be the same as your old family. And you both have to learn that it's not going to be, it's going to be something new.
Yeah. Yes. Hopefully you learn that it's going to be something different.
And I thought that was really apt, because I think if you sat down any newlywed or about to be newlywed and asked them a bunch of detailed questions trying to see if they didn't understand that, they would show that they intellectually understand that. But you're still just never going to be ready for it.
Well, and that's such a hard distinction that you just made. Intellectually, you can say, like, yes, I sit down and I think and I understand this is logically what's going to happen. But then you're confused when it doesn't feel right. And because it's all happening at the subconscious level.
You're experiencing a culture clash, just like you were describing about different cultures and what they all bring. And when you meld two families together, it comes up over just little things. Like, which side of the bed do you sleep on? How do you celebrate the holidays? What noises do you make when you eat? And Seinfeld has gotten millions of miles out of these kinds of jokes, but if you were to sum it all up, it's just like my wife said, it's just about two people learning that you're creating something new rather than recreating something old.
That's so profound, those three examples that you picked. And I know it's because you picked them from the conversation you were having with your wife.
No.
But here's the thing. You said those three things, and I immediately had answers to all three of them, whereas some single person listening to this podcast is like, why are those even important? They're super important. They're incredibly important. I'll tell you right now, how you celebrate the holidays. My wife didn't want to do Christmas. How do you eat? Too loudly. That's the answer that I get.
And I love how over the last couple of weeks you just described how your family created a new tradition of making a Yule log, and mine continued the tradition we created of having random anonymous wrapping paper.
Yeah, that's great. That's a classic example of little things that are going to define what your family is.
Right, and maybe my kids will like that so much that they'll want to pass that on to their own family, but it may or may not happen. One tradition my parents used to do with all of us is on our birthday, we would come out and our breakfast bowl would be upside down and underneath would be a quarter for each year we are old.
Aww.
And I always liked that when I was a kid, but when I started my own family, I didn't do it. I didn't even think about why, but I heard my sister mention the other day that she still does it.
Oh, that's interesting. Just carried forward. Why did you stop doing it? Too much money?
I don't know.
It's like $75 every time a kid has a birthday?
Because in the entire heap of all the different things we're trying to do, that I'm trying to bring along stuff or adopt things that she did, that one just didn't make the cut.
Okay, you just reminded me of something that happened that I'm going to share. We ran out of Tooth Fairy money. Ben, I don't have cash.
Did the Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy die in the same month in your house, Josh?
The Tooth Fairy is probably dead, but she comes less frequently, so it hasn't been addressed directly. Now, that said...
Comes less frequently. The Tooth Fairy comes in a rash all at once.
Okay.
In like a year, she comes like 10 times.
Dang it, Ben. Now I have two Tooth Fairy stories. Okay, I'm going to... This one quick, real first. My son lost a tooth. He went to put it in his little Tooth Fairy pillow that sits on the doorknob, so we don't have to actually go into his room when we do Tooth Fairy.
What? What enterprising parent came up with that idea?
It's been a huge time saver.
That's like having proxies in your deck, Josh. It has to be under the pillow.
You have to sneak in like a ninja and steal it from under his head. No, we didn't do that. But the problem was that when he went to put his new tooth into the pillow, he found the old tooth that was still there.
Oh,
fail! Everyone forgot. He forgot. So that just happened. But no, my daughter lost a tooth. She's like, "Oh, you think the Tooth Fairy come?" Well, she sure will. Put it in that little pillow and put it on your doorknob, and she'll definitely come. Ben, we had to sneak into her room to steal money out of her piggy bank. So the Tooth Fairy could give her money. I don't have cash. Who has cash? I haven't handled cash in years.
That just blows my... That is such a lawful evil thing to do, Josh.
I have to uphold the tradition, but I have no cash.
So you stole her money to give to her. Dude, why didn't you like go to the ATM and buy a candy bar?
In the middle of the night for
yes.
What? It was like 9:30. We were on our way to bed, dude. Like, could I have done that if I was the 10 out of 10 parent? Would I have done that? Yes, probably. But I guess I'm just the 8 out of 10 parent, and I stole the money from her.
Okay, here's the question to settle it all. The next day, did you sneak the money back in, or did you just leave it?
Yes. Okay. So if we're looking at the balance sheet of my life, there is a liability for tooth fairy payables. Like that's an open liability. Yes.
Okay. I love this in that it shows your approach to life, because in parenting, when you're doing all this kind of stuff, there's just it's always a negative balance. Like it's all liabilities.
You just do your best.
Oh man, that was great. All right, Josh, we just came through the holiday season, and as you do during the holiday season, at least in your and my life, sometimes we'll get our hands on some new board games. So I did, and you did. Let's talk about them.
Awesome. So this is a new one. I haven't done new board games in a long time, but my wife was very careful in getting games for the kids for Christmas, and we wanted to play some of them. This card game that we played was called Mantis, and I really appreciate it for its simplicity and its depth. Okay, go with me on this.
Mantis as in like an animal?
As in the insect, as a praying mantis, okay? This deck, it's a deck of cards, and on every card there is a colored mantis, a praying mantis that is one of 7 colors. And they've got little flavors, like the pink one's got little hearts, and like the red one's got fire and he's angry. And they're just colors, okay? They're just colors. And at the beginning of the game, you lay, like, it's 2 or 3 of them down face up in front of you, and these are the cards that you have. And then in the middle of the table, there is a deck that is face down. This is the genius part of this game. On the backs of the cards is a little symbol that has 3 different colors on it. And the card, or the mantis on the other side of that card, is guaranteed to be one of those 3 colors.
Okay.
So you have to decide before you flip it over, I am going to take this card for myself, or I am going to try to steal a card from one of my opponents. And then you flip over the top of the card. And then if the card matches a color, so say I'm going to steal a card from you, and you have like a pink and a purple card. And if I flip it over, if it's pink or purple, then I get the card that I just flipped over and all of your pink and or purple cards.
Okay, so at the heart of this game is this core mechanic of a guessing game with a 30% chance.
Yes, but sometimes there was, like, if it's not, or I say, I'm going to take this, I'm going to try to score my own points. That's the thing. If I steal cards from you, I don't get those points. They just go down in front of me face up. Other people can still steal them. If I say I want to score and I flip over a card that shares a color with mine, they go into a different pile. That's just part of my score now.
Sure.
So you can steal them
there's
back
one
and
potential
forth.
Outcome that's really exciting, but it's a 30% chance.
Well,
33.3.
What you're missing is that if I flip it over and it doesn't match any of the colors, then it just goes down in front of my stuff. And now it's a new color in front of my board. And so there's this game state where you have 1 or 2 of like 4 or 5 or 6 different colors in front of you. And then a card will come up at the top of the deck where all 3 of those colors, that person sitting across from me has all 3 of those colors showing. And so I could be guaranteed to steal cards from them, whereas I might only have a 66% chance to score points.
I see.
So it's this, very simple idea, but then you get into these little logical conundrums like, oh, crap, should I guarantee steal or should I risk and try to score points?
Nice. I love it. I love games like that can just elegantly do something that can be either surprising or disappointing without overdoing it, becoming too much.
Yes, where it's a simple mechanic that has a surprising amount of depth.
Cool. So Mantis, it's just a paperback sized box of cards?
Yeah, it's probably half a shoebox, just a big stack of Mantis cards.
Okay. Yeah, might give that one a try. The game that we tried, so I talked about in episode 114 the dilemma of the size of the pile. The trying to get equal gifts for the kids. And there was, for my second son, there was one last thing that was missing. We just need to get him something fun. And he's a gamer. He plays Magic, and we just need him to get a game. And my wife had an idea, and she'd gotten a few suggestions from him, but I decided to deviate. I was in a game store, and I saw one that caught my eye. One of those like indie games that has, like seals of approval from German board game associations or whatever.
Ooh, and I was like, those are risk. Those are high risk, high reward, because either it's got an instruction manual that's 15 pages long, or you're gonna like spend your whole life trying to figure it out.
So this one also had a personal connection. While we were in Europe in 2013, my parents came for a visit. We took a trip to southern Germany, and while we were in southern Germany, we went and visited the castles of Mad King Ludwig. And he's so famous for these castles because his most famous castle, known as Castle Neuschwanstein, was the one used to model the famous Cinderella castle in Disney World and Disneyland and all those places.
Okay.
And when you go to it in person, it is absolutely breathtaking. You have to cross this bridge over a waterfall, and there's these giant mountain vistas, and you go into it. And when you get inside, it's a bit of a mismatch. There's like this room over here, we don't know what that was for, and this one's incomplete, and that one's all this kinds of place. And there's like 6 of these castles all around southern Germany. We toured 3 of them. They were fantastic. That was all stored in our memory bank, so we got all the photos and stuff. And then I saw this game in the game store called The Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And I was like, that's it. That's the game.
That's such a weirdly tiny Venn diagram overlapping region. That's crazy.
I know. I wonder how they sell enough of them. Anyway, we got it home, and it has... Okay, if you're a gamer of, board game variety, a lot of games have trended to adopt common elements that are versatile enough to be adopted without feeling repetitive. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, around the board game Ticket to Ride, there's the little track around the outside where you keep track of your victory points that you've accumulated.
Yes.
A lot of games have added that mechanic because it isn't specific to a game. It's like the way we're going to determine who won this game is who gets the most victory points. And some of them will be secret and some of them will be public, and you kind of vaguely keep track. So it has that at its core, but what you're trying to do is you're 3 different, or 4, 2, 3, or 4 people. There's even a 1-player version. I've never seen a board game with a 1-player version. That's what's so fascinating about this game. That you're trying to build a castle at the whims of Mad King Ludwig.
Okay.
And you can build upstairs rooms and downstairs rooms, and there's dungeons and stables and greenhouses and entertaining rooms and sleeping rooms and scullery rooms, and there's just a whole pile of rooms, and there's different ways of accumulating rooms, and then they actually take up physical space. So part of it's like playing Tetris in front of you to make them all connect and not conflict and get along. And the other part is meeting the requirements of having it be a functional, logical, working castle.
Oh, it has to work. Man, as soon as you said that, I wanted to put a stable on the 2nd floor, but now that's just not going to work.
Yeah, and it was the rare kind of game that, like, even though there's a little bit of overhead, there's also a lot of transferable knowledge from other similar games that you can just bring along. Like, I get it. It has little icons, and when they match, you get the points, and I get the victory points on the board. I get all that. But the fun, it's so fun, because they had these little, just cute little icons and colorful graphics and funny names of things you don't even know. Like, this is a bartery room or whatever. And you're like, I don't even know what that is, but it looks cool. I want one. And I after playing it, I immediately want to play it again, and I'm still thinking about it. So it's a complicated game. It's an expensive game. It comes in a giant box, but I'm already looking forward to the next time I play it.
How long did it take you guys to get through the instructions before you could play the first game?
My son volunteered as tribute to kind of do the thing where he reads the 20-page manual so that he can digest it and kind of work us through it.
So go online.
You're that guy too.
Well, I am always that guy. But the hack now is somebody has a YouTube video explaining at start to finish how to play this game. And a good litmus test of if it's going to be too complicated is how long the runtime of that video is.
Yeah. But this is also one where you can just sit down, kind of stumble through a game once and get the idea and then pick up more ideas as you go along. And both of those are valid ways of doing it.
I have a secondary edition if I can slide this in to make the segment even longer.
Yeah.
Again, kids got multiple games. The other game that we got was Wizard Kittens.
Wizard Kittens. From the same people who make Exploding Kittens?
No, Exploding Kittens is a very different game. Wizard Kittens is very cutesy. The idea is that you embody a kitten that is going to like a Harry Potter-esque magical
Harry
school.
Potter meets cute cats.
The whole thing about this game, I'm not going to go into the mechanics, but the story is hilarious. It's you were goofing around. You and your friends as students were goofing around in the library and set off a bunch of curses at random. And so the objective of the game is to clean up these curses before you get caught by your teacher. This is
so this is players versus game?
Yes, players versus game, but there's victory points. The players can do better or worse. And this is what I thought was so fascinating. There's a time mechanic that's built into the way that you're using the resources. The faster you use resources, you're chewing through time. And so one victory condition, like it says, if you are able to clear all of the curses before you are caught by the teachers, this is how you do the victory points. If you are caught by the teachers before you clean up all the curses, this is how you tally up victory points. And so if you're if you're able to clear out all the curses, then if you cleared out the most curses, then you get the most points and you win. If the teacher catches you, if you have the cleanest hands, if you have the least amount of stuff, it's like, I'm sitting over here, I had nothing to do.
It's a game theory Punnett square.
Yes, exactly. So you can theoretically win the game by doing nothing the whole game.
And then turn the class into the teacher.
Yes, exactly.
Whoa. Holy cow, I've never heard of a game where you can actually do that, be that like real life archetype of the good kid that's like, no, I'm not going to participate in this naughty thing and I'm going to tell the teacher.
Yes, exactly. Well, you can't, there's no mechanic to actually tell the teacher. But essentially, yes, if you did the least amount of stuff, like it even says, tally up your points. If the teacher catches you and you have more than 10 points, you've lost. Period. Dot. End of discussion. You did too much. There's too much evidence. You're caught. You're busted. You've lost the game. If you have less than 10 points, now you add up how much stuff you literally have on your character, your resources. Whoever has the fewest resources has the best excuse to be like, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. And they're the winner.
Wow. That's interesting. I've never heard of a game with that mechanic. I love it. Okay, cool. Well, speaking of time mechanics, we also played a couple games of Escape. Have you ever played that?
Ooh, no, I don't think so.
At its core, it's a dice rolling game. It's cooperative on this generative map. So as you're playing, you go into new rooms, and as you go into a new room, you grab a random tile and it flips over, and then it generates a new quest. The conceit, the hook of it is that you're a bunch of adventurers in a like Indiana Jones style adventure where you've been thrown into like a temple, and it's players versus game, but you're on a strict clock. You play a soundtrack that plays like this tense music, and then you can tell as it's getting closer to the milestones, and if you don't meet certain milestones, then you're defeated by the game. So you have to get out of the dungeon before 10 minutes are up, and you're rolling dice the whole time to try to generate actions in the game.
I like that. So it's creating this artificial urgency that we all suffer under. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you make bad decisions in the moment, but that's cool. I like that. The game makes you feel.
It's cooperative, you collect items, it's really fun, and it's super tense, and it's always over in 10 minutes no matter what.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good hook. That's an excellent selling line. Like, this game will be over in 10 minutes whether you like it or not.
Well, speaking of games, Josh, you suggested an idea for our main segment today that we should talk about kind of the difference in our expectations of what we thought being a gamer would be like from when we were younger to what we are now, or what's the discrepancy between how we think of our residual self-image versus our actual life.
Oof, I think that's the step back from it. Let me tell you about the genesis of this idea when I sent it to you, okay? I was all right, so the way that our office works is we're closed on Fridays. We don't talk to people on Fridays, and you have the ability, like the hourly employees, they can work 4/10s if they want, and they don't have to come in on Friday. Or if they don't work 4/10s, they need to get the 40 hours, they can come in and work whatever they need to on Friday. No, we don't care. I have been working not only my 45 hours, but then also going in for most of the day on Friday, and I leave in the early afternoon because I want to pull my weight. But this past Friday, I went to work, and I'll tell you, Ben, I was sitting there and I was crunching through my accounting work. And in my inside-out head, there was one person in the back that was just all he was doing.
Can I be your head voice? Can I be your head voice?
It.
Cube.
The vintage cube is live on Magic Online until the 25th of January, and it's the best way to play Magic, and I love it so much, and I've already spent way too much money on it. But it wasn't the guy just whispering cube. He didn't need to do that. No, this guy is already checked out. He's over there drumming on his console, talking, like, incessantly talking to the other people trying to get real work done about the cube deck that he's going to draft and play later today. And boy, howdy, did that guy take up increasing amounts of my CPU cycles as the day was going on. But then I started, I don't know, it backed off of this idea of like, this is the best way to play Magic. And I love Magic. I've played Magic forever. But then I really started thinking about it. Ben, I play maybe 3 or 4 hours of Magic a week, tops.
Yeah. And so you sent me that stat. And I sent you a screenshot from a 1994 movie starring Robin Williams, Julia Roberts, and Dustin Hoffman.
Yes. And it was Hook. You sent me the thing Hook, and you even said it, and you sent that to me and mentioned, it's like, oh, where you're Peter Pan, where he's like, he goes from I'm never going to grow up to the lawyer that is making sure his kid doesn't pound the windows of the airline with the baseball because that's against the rules. And dude, you like dagger right to my soul. All defenses bypassed, and I really
because when we were young, we were Peter Pan. We swore that we would never grow up.
Ben, I sat and stared at the ceiling tiles for a full 3 minutes, like just digesting that comment before I could get back to work. Because, okay, the computer that I'm currently using, it's the Ship of Theseus, right? Because I built this right when COVID happened. I needed to upgrade my computer, and then every single component has been replaced since then. But Ben, the genesis of me purchasing and building a new computer
was to have the ultimate gaming rig.
No, it was for a game. This ultimate game was coming
that's
out.
That's not no. Yeah, that's yes. That's yes and not yes. No but.
But this was, but it wasn't in the general. Like it wasn't this pie in the sky. Like I want to have a gaming computer. It was I want a computer that can run this game. This game is coming out on this date. I have watched every update. I've seen every trailer that they've released for it. I've read all of the tech forums. This is the game that I'm going to spend like my entire life playing because it's checking every single box that I want in a game. That game was Cyberpunk 2077. Ben, I have not played that game yet. I built this computer 3 years ago for that game, and I have not purchased or played it at all.
Wow.
And because so my brain I still think I'm a computer gaming guy. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna take a weekend off and I'm gonna put 20 hours into this RPG that I want to play forever. But then the real part of my brain goes, you play 3 hours of Magic a week tops, and you're lucky to get that. There is no universe that exists where I can spend 60 hours playing a video game and still maintain all of my responsibilities as an adult.
That rocked my world, Josh. Listeners, are you thinking of your thing right now? What's your thing that you thought was going to be what you needed and you got all ready for it and then you never actually did it?
Well, but the logistics, it just never, there's no chance.
Yeah, no, I get it. But there's a whole lot going on here. Like, you're growing up, you're gaining more responsibility. There's still a residual self-image of thinking of yourself as a gamer, and now you have the resources to buy the nice computer, and this new game comes out. And to you, it represented the ideal of thinking of myself as an adult, accomplished gamer that now has the resources to get the best computer, to play the best game on the market, and I'm going to enjoy it. And it was like the dog that dug the hole to the other side of the fence and then didn't know what to do with himself and sat down.
Yeah, that's what happened. I in the meantime, this is crazy. A game went on incredible sale on Steam that I also wanted to play forever. It's called Horizon Zero Dawn. If you have seen a preview of this game or a trailer of this game, it's everything. It checks a ton of boxes. It's a third-person over-the-shoulder RPG about cavemen fighting robot dinosaurs. It's a post-apocalyptic future.
What? I have not seen it.
It's a
link in the show notes to a trailer.
Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah. Like, you see a woman sliding in slow motion doing bullet time with a bow and arrow at a robot T-Rex with mini guns mounted on the sides of its head, and it's so awesome. Ben...
That sounds hopeless.
That sounds
she's doomed.
Oh, the game is sweet. The game is sweet. It is sweet. I have played a sum total of 4 hours of it. It went on sale on Steam. So on sale, like it's normally a $60 or $50 game, and it went on sale for $10. I'm like, that's it. I can't. I'm pulling the trigger. It's on my watch list. I'm buying it. and I played it for maybe 4 hours, and I just don't have the time in my life to go back and sit down and sit for an uninterrupted hour or two just to make progress in this game.
Time is part of it. There's another thing. Hear me out here.
Okay.
For me, the game that was just like you described was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was the last big Zelda title that came out that required you to really immerse yourself in it. Just play it end to end and, understand everything that's going on and collect all the items and go through all the dungeons. And it was the last one where I finally just had to realize that those games weren't for me anymore. Oh, I loved them. They've only gotten better, but something about me changed and they're not for me anymore. They're for my kids now. I
was able to play Breath of the Wild all the way through, but the only way I was able to do
I know you did, and you're 7 years younger than me.
Well, but even that, the only way I was able to do that is the only time I played that game is when my entire family was also in the room co-piloting. They felt like they were actively participating in the game. Well, my wife didn't. She was on her phone the whole time. But
did you play it in a way where you were trying to just accomplish a quest, or were you just fooling around in the open world and doing mini games? And
yes, both of those. Let's do the story for a little while. Let's goof off for a while. We were just doing the things that we felt like doing.
It was like watching another episode of the Zelda cartoon.
Yes, yeah, like that.
Together as a family.
The kids would sit down all right, what do we want to do?
It's interactive. Go over there, Daddy.
Yes, it's I saw it over there. No, you've got to use the big axe on that one.
No, let's just finish the dungeon today.
Yes, exactly. Okay. It's no, kids, stop it with your going picking flowers. We are grinding shrines. That's what we are doing.
I can't think of the last time we did one like that. My kids will do that themselves. I have enough kids that one of my older kids will do that, and the younger kids will all join in and watch, and then I just become a spectator, and it's not mine anymore.
My kids are now, the last game that I did that with, it was Breath of the Wild, and then we did Hollow Knight the same way, where I would sit down and they would co-pilot. They have their own computers now. They don't have the patience to watch me play a game when they know they could be in there playing it. So that ship has sailed. This is no longer a thing that we do.
I think that's kind of becoming the theme of this discussion, is what are these ships that sail? When I was young, I played games to just consume my excess free time. I did them for excitement. I did them because they captured my mind. I was learning. It was fun. It was something to do with my friends. I enjoyed the way that the fantasy worlds captured my imagination, or the way the puzzles challenged my intelligence. All of these were things I was getting out of it that I don't need all of that as much as I used to in those ways.
Oof. Games, yeah, they haven't always been an escape, but a large part of my gaming addiction was escaping. It was just the real world is kind of boring and slow and not what it's all hyped up to be. Let me go completely ignore it and immerse myself in this much more exciting fantasy world where I'm the protagonist for a while.
Did you ever play the original Final Fantasy on the NES?
I have played that game, but it was much, much later. I did not play it when it first came out. I played it long after the fact and was re-released on some other handheld console.
So it's bound by all the limitations of that hardware platform. So it's kind of simplistic. The graphics are poor. The music is repetitive. But it was the first game to really introduce this idea of this long, epic story. And the total gameplay of the game was 80 hours or something like that. Is really long.
Very legit.
Which was huge. You can play all of the levels of Mario Brothers in under an hour. So the idea that you would have this game had all these limitations, but was this expansive, vast idea with stories and betrayals and characters and NPCs, all these kinds of things, was new. I've sat down to replay that same game on this. I've got a Nintendo NES Classic sitting in front of me, and I sat down and tried to play it, and man, sometimes you just have to grind levels, and I can't do it anymore.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion, is how games have changed with quality of life improvements just to make the world a better place to play the game.
Right, to make level grinding organic and fun instead of just a chore that you do on the way to the next thing is almost runtime filler.
I'm going to blow your mind. So, World of Warcraft has been in existence since 2004. It is 20 years old this year, okay? And I'm still playing it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an old game, right? A lot has changed in 20 years in the gaming community. And a lot has changed in this game. Like, this game is night and day different from what it was when I first started playing it in college, okay? But this game is so old and has such a diehard fan base. They have a second version of it that you can play. If you have an active World of Warcraft account, you are entitled to play their World of Warcraft Classic, where it is the 15-year-old version of World of Warcraft. All of the quality of life has been stripped out. All of the hard, super grindy stuff is still in there. So
you can go back and play Final Fantasy 1 if you want to.
If you really want to, you can go back and play the crappy old version of that game. Yes.
Huh. Yeah. I have a few games like that. Okay, I want you to do me a favor right now. Think of all the, let's say in the calendar year 2023, if you could make a pie chart of all of the gaming that you did. Ooh. I want you to think of each discrete game. We can group them together if there's too many in a section. Okay. What would be the biggest piece of the pie?
The biggest piece, the game that I played most in 2023, hands down, has to be Magic the Gathering.
Okay, and did you play it on Arena more or on Magic Online more or in person more?
So I really dialed back in 2023 for my online play. I don't know why, it just stopped happening. So it's probably, if I had to put percentages to it, I would say it was 40% on Arena, 40% in person, and what the other 20% being Magic Online.
Okay. So that's the Magic piece of the puzzle. What's the next biggest piece of the puzzle for a game you played in 2023? I'm going somewhere with this, so just stick with me.
The next game that I played, it's probably that game I was talking about, probably Horizon Zero Dawn, and I've got 5 or 6 hours in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Your pie is 99% one game and 1% another game. And then all others, like board games with the family and those kinds of things.
Ooh, you know what? I probably spent more time playing random board games with my family than I did playing Horizon Zero Dawn. If you spread out over the entire year, yeah.
Okay. What about mobile games? Do you play any mobile games?
Ooh, no.
None?
I don't think I've launched the Arena client on my phone for probably the last.
And you don't have just like some like auto battler or puzzle game or.
I used to.
Do you play Sudoku? Do you play the Wordle?
Okay. I did a lot of Wordle in 2023.
Okay, let's count that.
Let's count Wordle.
I got a specific purpose I'm doing with this.
Okay.
Okay. Wordle, board games with the family, Horizon Zero Dawn, Magic the Gathering, 3 different flavors. Anything else?
Probably not. Everything else falls into that.
Did you hold a console controller in your hands in the year 2023?
Yeah, I did. Man, a year is a long time. I probably played a couple hours of Hollow Knight at the beginning of 2023. A year is a long time.
Do you not play World of Tanks anymore?
Oh, geez, no.
That ship has sailed.
That's been forever since I played World of Tanks. Yeah.
Okay.
I got up to tier 8 Russian tank.
No Switch, no Xbox, no PlayStation, no.
So we have an Xbox 360 that never gets launched. We have an Xbox One that never gets launched. We have a Switch that my kids play all of it. Oh, all right. So every once in a while, I would sit down and play an hour or two of Minecraft with my daughter because she's a huge Minecraft buff.
And you also played some World of Warcraft in 2023, right?
Ooh, yes. We got back into World of Warcraft in the summer when my kids were off school and they stayed home all the time. We got them World of Warcraft accounts and they played. So, okay. Yeah.
So we've got 6 or 7 different games that you played in the year 2023.
Yes.
Now, what are the preconditions that has to exist for you to initiate one of those? Ooh. And are they fungible? Like, I want to play a game right now, but enough of the preconditions aren't met for this game, so my next best alternative is this one.
That happened today. Today.
Explain the situation.
I woke up this morning. It is Saturday. Today was a free day. We had nothing to do. I had no chores, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking the day. This is my day. I'm just gonna do stuff. And I got out of bed, and I walked to my computer, and I sat down, and I realized that my last vintage cube draft had gone very, very poorly, and I'm now out of play points and I'm out of tickets. So I stare at my computer for a few minutes. I'm like, I cannot play Vintage Cube unless I put another $20 into this slot.
Okay, so that's one precondition, is money that you have to continue to put into it, right?
Yeah.
So what did you do instead because you weren't willing to put money into it?
So I was sitting there looking at the screen when my wife walked in, like, what are you doing? And I immediately, like, abort. Because I'm not.
I would have said, I want to play Magic, but I have to spend money to do it, and I don't want to.
You see, I'm not even. I don't want to put into the universe how much I spend on Magic, because any amount greater than 0 is too much.
Josh, every gamer can feel in their heart the old version of that photo meme that says, when I die, don't let my wife sell my guns for what I told her I paid for them.
Yes, exactly. We did Friday Night Magic. I have to pay $10 just to walk in and sit down at a table to play with cards that I brought.
But you win most weeks and get more than $10 back in store credit and product.
No, that's not how our store works. There's not tournaments there, dude. They do.
Man.
It's $10 to sit down and play Commander. So again, any amount greater than 0 is too much to be playing Magic, and I can't tell her, like, oh yeah, I've been putting. Nicole, apologies in advance. I will know, Ben, to the second when my wife hears this part of the podcast, because I will find out about it. Since the Vintage Cube went online right before Christmas, I've spent consistently $20 a week into Magic Online, into the ether, to play the Vintage Cube.
It's a really good gaming experience. It's so pure. It's such a refined, pleasurable version of Magic the Gathering. It's fast, it's low overhead, it's powerful, it's interesting, it's complex, it rewards innovation. It has there's so much to it.
I just heard my wife screaming from the future, "Oh, shut up, Ben. He's spending money on digital games with no prizes."
Okay, but I always love to go back to the John Lennon quote, or wherever you got it from. Like, if you enjoyed it, it wasn't wasted.
That's how I feel.
Like,
but hang on.
Josh, your family goes to the movies and watches, like, the Emoji Movie. I don't know how you... Okay, I can defend an hour of playing Vintage Cube.
Let me land my plane on this one. Yes, I can justify the Vintage Cube, but Ben, I have it built into me somehow that if I'm spending money and only I am deriving utility from it, I hesitate first. Hang on a second. I don't want to be spending money on just me. I have other people I need to worry about. So when my wife walked in and said, "What are you doing?" my brain immediately aborted, and I said, I'm going to fire up World of Warcraft. Do you want to play with me? And she sat down, and we played together for a couple of hours this morning. It was great.
Nice. I love it. Even though your motives weren't pure, I love that that ended up in a happy place.
The good thing about World of Warcraft is you can have multiple characters, okay? I have one character that I play for myself when I'm playing by myself. I have one character that lives with my wife's one character, and they're just in the same place and we do everything together. I have another character that lives with the rest of my family's characters. All 4 of us have characters that are in the same place that we'll party up and do stuff together occasionally, because Lord and Lady, that turns into me and my wife herding cats the entire time. But it's fun, and we enjoy it, and it's been great.
Yeah, I've constantly been on the search for a game my wife and I play together. My sister and her husband do the New York Times crossword together each day, and it's just this little ritual of togetherness that bonds them together, and I admire it. And every now and then my wife will invite me to play a game with her, and I try to say yes to those so that we can do it. There was one I resisted for a while. It's in the New York Times puzzle section called Connections, but I eventually started doing it, and we're connected. So my wife and I every day will like race on the Wordle or compare to see who got the best or play Connections or stuff, and I enjoy those little moments of togetherness.
There are games out there that are asymmetrical in the gameplay, and I really like those. For one of the best examples I can remember is Super Mario Galaxy. The first player 1 is Mario and is doing a 3D platformer that is challenging. But player 2 is just kind of
You can hand them the little brother controller.
Yeah, they get the little brother controller, and they're collecting the stars which does help progress the plot, and you need that to happen.
But they're not going to mess you up, and they can't.
You say that. She found out one of the things you can do is she can pull the trigger to shoot the stars, which will stun enemies, which is great and very helpful. But if she hits Mario with it, he will do a little hop. And she killed me so many times doing that.
Awesome. Okay, So today you had the experience where you sat down and played one game, but enough preconditions weren't met, so you played another one. That's what I want to talk about for a second. You have this hierarchy of like, there are moments in your life that you'll fill with gaming, but certain preconditions have to be met. And man, over the last 3 months, I've gone through so many of those. Like, for instance, when I first got to Kuwait and I was barely even sleeping, like I would go an entire work shift every day for 3 weeks in a row, I think, and I never went to the bathroom during 12 hours in the middle of the day.
That's not healthy. You're clearly not drinking enough water.
Yeah, all that's true. But I'm here now and I'm fine. I've already finished growing. This isn't going to stunt my growth. I was just maxed out on resources. And that's an interesting situation because then I get back to my room and I don't really want to do anything, but I also am not tired and I don't want to go to sleep. I want to do something. My brain needs something. And so then what game do I play? There's 2 games that I ended up playing during those moments. One is Civilization 5 in this instance. I saw a great meme once that said, if you're a grown man and you don't have a game where you're staring down at a map, what are you even doing with your life?
Yes, I like that very much. Civilization's a good one because you just turn everything on AI and you have to make a decision once every, 20 minutes? And the rest of the time you're just watching it do stuff?
Yeah, but, it's more involved than that. But yeah, sure. I'm playing Civilization 5. 6 got too complicated, so I'm playing 5. And right at the beginning of that deployment, man, I probably filled just a lot of my extra moments with Civilization 5. So that's one. The other is like Tetris or Dr. Mario, a puzzle game that just has infinite replayability that just engages a part of my brain that doesn't get engaged doing other things.
Okay, that's solid.
So those are the kind of games I seek after in those moments when, like, I just want to, and I could get interrupted at any second and just walk away from it and nothing's gone. Like in the Wordle, if you're trying to do the Wordle and you get interrupted in the middle of it, it's really disruptive. Like it just sucks. And
you know what? I'm now remembering 2023 was the year that I played Marvel Snap quite a bit. That's a phone game, and I'll tell you, Marvel Snap was fun for the first, I don't know how many hours I put into it, probably quite a few. But there was a day that I just stopped loading it. I just stopped turning it on. Like I just stopped opening it, and I did not miss it. But that game was really good because one game lasted 2 or 3 minutes. It was a great I'm going to go take a poop game because that's about how long one game would last. And, I mean, it was fun. There was nothing wrong with it. I got to a point where I started seeing the code in the Matrix on how they were going to start separating me from the money in my wallet, and I never opened it again.
Yeah. That's a great example of another thing about games is some are golf balls and some are rice. And like a vintage draft is fun and it's a good gaming experience, but it's a golf ball. Like once you click that first card, you are now tied to your computer for the next 15 minutes and you cannot divert your attention for a second.
Yes, the drafting portion is probably 15 to 20 minutes, and it takes your full attention. Like you can't be like taking out the trash or anything. Like this is completely outside of your scope of control.
You can't pause it. You can't do something else. You got to give it your undivided 100% attention.
And after you've drafted the deck, now you have 3 matches that you need to play. 3 best of 3 Magic matches with a 25-minute chess time.
That could be over in as fast as 10 minutes, but usually take 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, and the decks that I play, they usually take 30 to 40 minutes.
And when you're signing up for this, that basically you're dedicating somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half of 100% attention.
And that's so, yes. And you know that going into it. And so when you have a family life, you have like, okay, what time is dinner going to be over versus what time am I going to have to engage with children? You're looking
for that block of time in your day.
Yes, because there's nothing worse. Oh, Ben, there is nothing worse than your wife going, we have a problem. Can you please come help me with the children? And then you turning around
right after
you
clicked your first card.
No, or you're like in game 2 and it's close. And you like turn over your shoulder like, is this something that can wait another 10 or 15 minutes? Yep. And that because that return look that you're going to get, you're spending some relationship currency on that.
Yeah, my wife has been so good because I try to not withdraw from that bank as often as possible. And she acknowledges, she gives me in hermeneutics of generosity, that she recognizes the utility that I get in my life from playing those games, that when those moments of conflict come up unexpectedly, like if I'm not starting a draft on purpose to get out of a chore,
okay,
then she'll give me some generosity and be like, I know that you like that, and I know you're in the middle of a match and you can't just pause it and you can't just walk away from it. I can wait. How long is it going to be? And she'll ask me and mean it, just to set her expectation.
This is interesting because now what you just said there made me start reflecting on my relationship with my wife in gaming, right? Is how much time you dedicate to the two of those. And what I'm realizing is that while my wife she gives me the H of G and all those same things, but not to the extent that I think your wife does. Because at the end of the day, and she's absolutely right, and this is why my brain started chicking, is it's a game. It's just for fun. If something more important comes up, I should be completely willing and able to Alt F4 out of it and completely abandon all of my investment into that specific iteration of the game and go off and do things that are real. And my wife has had, we've had to meet in the middle, like all good relationships, because when we first met, she put zero stock into it. Zero. None whatsoever. The one time that we went to the gym together while we were dating, and I said, hey, we got to leave because I have a prior engagement. And we left the gym before her workout was done because I had to get to a World of Warcraft raid that was pre-scheduled.
You talked about that on the podcast.
She was pissed. And so here's the thing. She has come a little bit my way in understanding, okay, this is important to him. He gets a lot of value out of it, so I need to give him a little H of G. At the same time, I'm realizing I have gone a little bit her way too, where it's like, there are things now where I will just get up and walk away from it.
That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, about the two people making a new thing together.
Yes. So I'm not going to... there are things in my life that are more important in these games that I should be willing to drop the game like a hot potato to take care of.
Okay, I want to propose a new infographic. This is a continuum of game disruptiveness. Like, if you're playing this game and it got disrupted, how much of a rift in the space-time continuum would that create? Like, at the very lowest end, it's a game that either is over really fast or you can pause it forever. Okay. And nothing changes. Okay. Like, no cost whatsoever to stopping playing instantly.
Yeah, okay.
And at the other far end of the game is like the most disruptive thing possible you can think of stopping playing. Like, let's say, for instance, you are playing Magic Online and you are in the finals of, like, the online championship.
Yes, actual money on the table. I was thinking, my brain...
Not just a little bit of money, but, like, my travel tickets and rewards and pro points. And
my brain went to poker. Like, where you're...
Okay, poker, great.
Yeah,
like,
you're at the World Series of Poker, you have $1 million in chips on the table, and then your wife calls and says, hey, I need you right now.
Yeah. Do you stand up and walk away? Now, of course, you're in my gaming continuum. There's the cap is much lower. Like, it's the $10 fee you paid to get into this vintage draft. Like,
yeah, that's a very real fee. Like, it's low enough that I'm willing to pay it, but it's high enough that I take these drafts very seriously.
And you try to pick a set of time when you'll be playing it where you know that it won't put it at risk. But if a situation came up where it did, and the great thing about my wife that I love so much is she knows that, and when she sees me give it, even if I don't point it out to her, she appreciates the contribution.
Yeah, it's tough to explain to your wife that, yes, I could stop everything that I'm doing to come help you with your situation, but it's going to cost us $5.
Right. Just straight up cost $5.
Yeah.
Like, why did you put that $5 at risk when you know I might ask you for it?
Why does this cost you $5? Why did you start a thing that costed $5 when you knew I was going to need you? Yeah, it's a whole other thing.
I don't get asked those questions as much. I think she's just recognized the utility that we get out of that.
I get more than $5 of utility out of any single game of Vintage Cube.
So in my last year, I've played board and party games with people. I play the puzzle games I've all mentioned, the word games in the New York Times. I also play a game called Flow Free, where there's colored dots and you have to draw lines between them without overlapping each other. I play that one almost every day. I have a mobile game called Hero Wars I play. I play Magic the Gathering almost exclusively online, but also in person. I play Civilization. I play Dr. Mario. I played a lot of Tetris over the Christmas season.
You're what we like to call a retro gamer, Ben. You're playing all this old stuff. You just want to live back in the 90s when you woke up early on a Saturday morning.
I'm not, though. I can't stand to play Final Fantasy again, but I'm enjoying the heck out of Tetris. It's a different kind of retroing. I did play Super Mario Brothers 2 all the way through to completion just because that's my favorite of the series and still is. And then I played disc golf, but I think we're going to exclude sports from this discussion.
Oh, man. You know how much money I have in snowboarding equipment that's just sitting in my garage? Every time I see it, every time I look at it, two things happen. One, I hearken back to days when I had time and I was cool and hip and I was a snowboarder, just so awesome out there on the slopes and getting better at something physical. And the second thought is I really should sell this crap because it is worth something, and I have not touched it in multiple years.
Well, maybe it'll be the thing where you get too much stuff, and instead of getting a storage unit, you have to get rid of your snowboarding equipment.
Yeah, that probably needs to happen sooner rather than later. Ben, I was so cool. Ben. What happened?
This is it. You're the one that proposed this segment, Josh. You have become Robin Williams. You're in a suit and telling your son not to tap on the window. You used to be Peter Pan.
Ben,
you were never going to grow up.
I was an Air Force special operations pilot that killed people on the regular and snowboarded
Josh,
on the weekends.
You have killed way more people than me and probably anyone that listens on this podcast.
And I snowboarded on the weekends, and now I'm a CPA that begs for 45 uninterrupted minutes so I could go play the Vintage Cube online. What happened, Ben? What happened?
I don't know. Josh, gaming represents this outlet to us. It is an outlet for our creativity. It introduces an element of unpredictability when everything else is maybe a bit predictable and boring. It gives us validation, I think. Sometimes I enjoy the just winning that comes out of it. If you play with other people, there's a sense of camaraderie and belonging. Like you said, there's an escape to a fantasy world. There's so many things that it gives us. I also think it impacts how we see the world. You know, I look at the world through the eyes of a gamer. I think of the ways I could cooperate with others or the ways that I'm competing with others. It improves my critical thinking and helps me focus on what I'm trying to get. Just like how you talked about how that game that your kids were playing, the Wizard Kittens, created this, game theory Punnett square where they were either supposed to cooperate or work against the others.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before about how you translate the skills that you get from Magic the Gathering into the real life, and that's putting the absolute best face on it that you possibly can. I honestly feel like gaming just scratches an itch that I can't scratch any other way. There are certain things like, I don't know, pulling off my combo playing Commander and Magic the Gathering, just running around in World of Warcraft. I don't know why, but there's something about that just is, I'm not going to say fulfilling, that's too strong a word, but that is satisfying in a way that I don't normally get in my everyday life.
I'll say it. Fulfilling.
I
probably spent maybe, I can't figure out, maybe 200 hours while I was deployed playing Dr. Mario on my NES Classic. Just after work, I'd sit down for an hour and play it. 2 hours, I'd lose track of time. Didn't matter. Didn't have anything else to do. Just sit there and play Dr. Mario until my eyes bled. When I got back home over the holiday, we were over at my brother's house for a New Year's Eve party, and he goes, "Hey, Ben, want to play Dr. Mario?"
Oh, I don't know. I'm a little rusty.
Sure, Brian, let's play Dr. Mario.
Did you lose the first game on purpose and then put money on the second one?
That didn't happen, but by the time we were done, there was a whole crowd of people around me and young children were chanting my name. I'm not even making an hyperbole here.
Well, that was in an LDS holiday, so there was no less than 86 small children about.
Apologies to my brother-in-law for being the casualty of all of the fact that I needed something in order to dissipate the stress of that job in the deployed environment, and I did it playing Dr. Mario, and then I let him, yeah. And
that is a classic Card Sharky moment. It's like, Dr. Mario, what's that? Sounds like fun. Can I try?
All right, Josh, we're kind of wrapping it up here. I've loved some of the ideas that have come out in this discussion. I want to give you a series of tasks, and I want you to propose a game in order to fulfill this task. So, You're at a social gathering where the expectation is that you're going to play some kind of game. You have people of unknown or varied abilities and commitment. How do you help a group of new acquaintances get to know each other over a game? What game do you pick?
Ooh, there's a lot of variables here, but a really solid go-to one is probably Ticket to Ride.
Nice.
Instructions are pretty easy. The turns are very fast. This is very important when you're talking about possibly introducing non-gamers to a game. They have to not be bored at any point for them to be having any fun, so the turns have to go fast.
Like you said, turn length is crucial.
Yeah. If I know that I'm going to be around a group of nerds, like I'm sitting around and I know these people have played other games and they're over the hurdle of thinking games aren't for them, it's going to be Dominion. I'm going to introduce them to one of the best deck building games that I've ever played and could think of. If they are true hardcore nerds, like I know, like, oh, these are the guys that I play Magic Gathering with, they're coming over and they're dedicating 3 hours of their life to me, it's going to be Scythe. That game is fantastic. I love a game that you can win by conquering your opponents or by harvesting the most wheat. Love it.
Awesome. Okay. Over the holidays, I had the great opportunity. My brother he's a collector, and he ended up with my old Nintendo 64, but I'd been begging him to bring it around. So when he came over, he brought it with all the games, and I'd hooked it up to my mom's TV, and I'd been playing it over just playing it. So at one point, I had a group of 4 people, and I'm like, let's play Mario Golf. I know that's a weird title to have selected.
That's a weird choice. Of all of the 64 games that you picked, it was going to be Mario Golf?
It is. So we put in Mario Golf, and me and 2 of my kids and my daughter-in-law were playing it and having a good time. There was the first few holes were as rough until people kind of worked off the edges, and it's kind of cartoony and arcadey, and once you just get the basic core mechanics down, you can do okay. I think we accidentally reset the game, and we were able to start over and erase the score discrepancy, and we were playing Mario Golf. But it had the crucial problem that you just mentioned. At one point, about the 11th hole, my daughter-in-law goes, I just spend a lot of time sitting around watching you guys play the game. And it was just like you said. I had made the mistake as a game sommelier to pick a game that didn't have short turns.
Yes. If you have non-gamer people, you got to have short terms.
Someone knew that, however, and on the N64 controllers, the D-pad and the yellow camera control pad both have a series of taunts and cheers. Specifically in the voice of whatever Mario character you have.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you can occupy your non-turn by making
just like
fun
you were
of the
talking
person.
about moving the star around while you're playing Super Mario Galaxy.
Just enough of something to do to have some fun.
Yeah.
That's solid. I like that.
All right. What if you're with a close friend and you're going to pass 2 hours? Just you and one other person. What game are you picking?
Is this close friend you? Because we're busting out Magic. Like we're gonna play some real Magic.
Do you transition to electronic gaming at that point?
Ooh, is there a console game or an electronic game that I would play with another person? If we had all the stuff sitting around, if, for example,
you and Nicole did it yesterday.
We did this morning. This morning. We sat in the kitchen and we played World of Warcraft together, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Okay. What about all by yourself and you just want to decompress after a hard day and you could get interrupted at any moment, but you just want to put something on? Then what are you picking?
Oh, and I could get interrupted at any moment?
Yeah.
Ooh. It has to be a first person. It has to be a non-online game.
Let's say it's your computer in the kitchen there.
It would probably be Mass Effect. I bought the Legendary Edition, so I have all 3 Mass Effects on my PC now. And so
you can just hit pause and walk away at any second.
Well, it's on my computer. I've played all of the games through to completion with ridiculous numbers of hours, so I know everything that's happening in them. I have no problem pausing it at any moment and walking away from it if I need to.
Okay. What about if you're trying to pick a game that you want to have some fun with one of your kids, but maybe you have a little bit of an educational undercurrent to it?
Educational undercurrent? Like I want them to learn something?
You want them to learn some critical thinking.
There's a number of card games that we have around the house that would help with that. I think the Mantis game I mentioned was pretty good for some critical thinking. I'm a big fan of Point Salad, which is a quick card game that you play. Yeah, Point Salad's good. Exploding Unicorns. Not Exploding Unicorns. There's a unicorn game that's like baby's first Magic. That's kind of fun just because there are cards that have like specific rules and you have to interpret it in the game state. I call it Baby's First Magic because I feel like somebody who was trying to make a watered down version of Magic when they made that game. And so, yeah, that's a good one too.
All right, I want to tell you something that happened over the holiday. My older son somehow had the brilliant idea to sit down with my 8-year-old nephew and say, "Hey, Oliver, I'd like you to play this game." And he turned on the Stanley Parable.
Oh, I did that to you. To you. That was, you asked me because you were skeptical. You said something along the lines of, what can video games give me that any other form of media can't? And I put you on pause. I said, we're going to get back to my house. I'm going to turn on a game and you're going to play it and you're going to have an experience unlike anything that you have ever experienced in any other media before.
Yeah.
And you did.
They really put some thought into it. So I didn't get to see him play it, but afterwards my son told me what happened. He said Oliver sat down at that game and perfectly followed every instruction that he'd gotten, beat the game in 10 minutes, and then turned to me and looked and said, that was easy, and walked away.
No, you can't let him do that. If you're
No. That's not the end of the story.
Okay, good.
That's not the end of the story. He's a smart kid, and he's a gamer, but for some reason, he's also so kind of guileless that he did this and just thought that was an easy game. Like, you can experience that game on the surface where there's a voice telling you what to do, you do what it says, and at the end, it's this almost too idealistic ending. Yeah. Here you are. You've reached the beautiful ending. You achieved everything. You've the peace in the universe, and your mind is at ease, and everything is well, and you have achieved it. Well done, Stanley. And they don't take it back at the end.
Yep. It's just over. Roll credits.
It's unironic. The end. Something must have happened in my nephew's brain at some point, and he comes back and he goes, "Hey, wait a minute. Why did he tell me to go through the left door?" And then he played it again.
And this is where he realized that this game that he spent 10 minutes on and almost dismissed is more like a 10-hour game that is built as a psychological thriller, unlike anything you've ever experienced.
Yeah, but I love that if you want to be the kind of person that just does what you're told and gets the happy ending and walks away thinking that's all there is to it, it will let you do that.
Yep, that's true. I am actually currently playing a portion of the Stanley Parable as we speak. One of the achievements that you can earn playing the Stanley Parable is the achievement that's called Go Outside. And you earn that achievement by not opening the game Stanley Parable for 5 years.
My brain was spinning thinking, how is he playing the Stanley Parable right now? Oh, okay. All right. What if you are slightly experiencing a bit of tension with the missus and you want to turn on a game to cut the tension, either because you think she might be intrigued and potentially join in, or just because it's going to distract you and you don't care and you just want to think about something else?
If there's some tension in my life with my missus and I need to turn on a game to cut that tension, it's going to be a KU game. It's going to be KU football or KU basketball that she's going to watch.
Turn on her alma mater playing sports. I love it.
There you go.
Perfect. What if you need a game to entertain a group of 8 to 12-year-old children?
Ooh, Just Dance on the Switch has been pretty good.
Oh, we haven't talked about Bimani games. You and I have both had a past of like being really good at some Bimani games. You are like a super pro at Guitar Hero, and I'm pretty good at the dancing ones.
All right, so I was a pretty awesome guy at Dance Dance Revolution. I think you were too. This was the first time we went to Magic in Vegas. We blew a guy's mind and made him embarrassed to be standing with us. All three of us hardcore Magic players. He was embarrassed to be our friend because we drew a crowd playing Dance Dance Revolution.
I love it. A Magic player was embarrassed to be with some gamers. Over the holiday, my daughter-in-law had been telling me that, we got to play Dance Dance Revolution because I'm going to beat you. And we went to a Nickelcade last week, and I got her there, and I totally beat her.
We have the full Rock Band 2 for the Xbox 360. That's the only reason we still have that thing plugged in, is because it's been a couple of years since we brought it out, because my son was at that time just old enough to understand what he was supposed to be doing, but my daughter had no clue and she was not having any fun whatsoever. She's older.
Have you gotten
now.
it out recently?
Not recently. And somebody mentioned it the other day. That might be what I do tomorrow. I might need to bust that thing out tomorrow and see if the girl can keep up with the rhythm games now, because that could be really fun. Nicole and I are very good at that game.
All right. One last question for you, Josh. What would it take for you to play Steampunk 2077? When is that going to Cyberpunk 2077? When is that going to happen?
I have reconciled in my mind that I don't have the time in my life that I'm willing to give up to play a hardcore, in-depth narrative RPG like that right now. Because that is really me shutting out the rest of the world to dive into some fantasy. And while part of my brain wants to do that, the rest of me doesn't anymore. I don't want to...
It's interesting that Mass Effect was that for you a while ago, but because you played it through, you can just do it superficially and in a broken way now. But to do a new one, you recognize that you don't have the bandwidth for it.
Well, it's not that I don't have the bandwidth. It's that I don't want to shut out. There's too many things in my life that I care about that are high priority now. Back then, I was a single guy, or maybe I was just, I was still dating Nicole, or we were newly married, and we still had kind of our own lives and enough time in our existence to do our own thing. I don't want... What I feel like is if I'm doing that, if I'm going to sit down and really dive into something, it's no longer just this is where I'm spending my time. I am now taking that time away from the people that I care about the most. And that's the real hurdle. It's not about I don't have the time. It's about I don't want to take it away from my kids.
Josh, that was beautiful.
Shut up, Ben.
I loved it. Because that answers the question we've been asking. Like, we were Peter Pan. We're never going to grow up. But now we look at ourselves and we're Peter Banning, and we're wearing a suit, and we're telling our kid not to knock on the window. And we're like, how did I end up here? That you just answered the question. That's how you ended up there.
Yeah, because it's not about me anymore, Ben. It's not about me escaping from reality.
Peter Pan was never going to grow up because he didn't want to have responsibility, and somewhere along the way you accepted it.
And I recognize that I'm a better person for having accepted it, and I can't just turn it on and off when I feel like it. It's an all or nothing thing.
Yeah. When I first started playing Magic the Gathering, I got a little bit obsessive about it, and I spent probably too much money that should have gone to other things and too much time that should have gone to other things on it. But I was always kind of aware of it, like a person with a drug habit. Like I know this is hurting me and others around me. And I always ask myself, what's the end game? Like on Truman's Show, it's going to end sooner or later. How's it going to end? And I've always asked myself, and I've started to come to peace with the fact that I've been able to find a way to play Magic that isn't so disruptive that I'm ever going to have to abandon it someday.
Man, Ben, when you met me and I was still a single guy, I'd walk into the store. Oh, a new set came out? Oh, hey, here's $600. Give me all of it. Yeah. No, every 3 months, it's like, here's $600 or $700. I need all of it. Now, this morning, I sat and stared at my computer for 5
because
full
you didn't
minutes.
Want to spend $10.
Because I didn't want to give it $10.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we've asked the right questions and answered the right questions. Next time on the Bad at Magic podcast, I want to talk to you about a thesis I wrote a few years ago that I've never told you about, called the fundamental manpower paradigm of the military.
I think you've mentioned it to me once or twice, and I'm sure we have differing opinions on certain portions of that idea.
Yeah. Well, listeners, if you have some experiences with gaming that you want to talk about, some games you'd like to recommend, I'm sure you were thinking about all this while we were talking about it. I'm really interested in your thoughts, so please engage with us on our Facebook page or on our subreddit at reddit.r/r/badatmagic, and come and tell us what you think. Tell us about your favorite games. Tell us what you think about the games that we talked about and what they mean in your life. And if you used to be Peter Pan and you've had to grow up.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. Maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. It's crazy the visibility we can get from one good review. And if something that Ben or I said today has given you the same kind of existential crisis that I had earlier this week thinking about this, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.